A wall of static crackles through the speakers, uneven, fractured. It distorts, pulses, like a broken transmission fighting to be heard. A whisper seeps through the noise, low, breathless, filled with something between terror and regret. They lied to you. Fade in. A dimly lit room. The air is thick with unease, the shadows stretching across the walls like specters lurking just beyond sight. The glow of a flickering computer screen casts an eerie, sickly blue hue over the lone figure sitting before it. Jack Harris. His face is hollow, gaunt, eyes sunken and bloodshot, as if he hasn't slept in days. His hands tremble slightly as they hover over the keyboard. His breath is shallow, uneven. There's an urgency in the way he stares into the camera, as if this moment is his last chance to speak before something inevitable happens. Jack Harris, whispering, voice cracked with exhaustion and fear. You think you know the truth about Mars. That it's just a dead rock, a barren wasteland with nothing but dust and silence. A pause. A shadow flickers across his face as the monitor glitches for a split second. Jack Harris, lower now, eyes darting to the side, as if listening for something unseen. But you've been lied to. The room feels smaller, the silence pressing in as if the very air is listening. Jack Harris, everything you've seen, everything they've told you, it's all an illusion. A carefully crafted lie. SFX, a sharp, metallic knock echoes through the room. It's not frantic, it's measured, deliberate. Jack flinches, his breath hitching in his throat. His eyes snap toward the door, his body tensing. The dim light flickers again, or maybe it's just his imagination. He swallows hard, turning back to the camera. His voice is more urgent now, desperate. Jack Harris, whispering, faster now. They're coming for me. I don't have much time. SFX, another knock. Louder this time. The door handle rattles, as if tested. His breathing is quicker now, chest rising and falling with panicked urgency. He presses closer to the camera, eyes wild, darting back and forth, as if trying to memorize every face that might be watching. Jack Harris. But before they erase me, you need to know what really happened on Mars in 2030. SFX. A distant, unnatural hum begins. It's subtle at first, like a radio frequency just out of range, a vibration at the edge of perception. But it's growing. Jack shudders, squeezing his eyes shut for a moment, the noise seeming to press into his skull. Jack Harris, gritted teeth, barely above a whisper. The mission they never talked about. His hands tighten into fists. His breathing is ragged now. Jack Harris. The mission that left me the only survivor. SFX. A loud thud at the door. The monitor screen glitches violently, static consuming the image. The eerie hum escalates to something almost alive, a pulsating, rhythmic sound that seems to match the beating of a heart. Jack's face is now ashen, his pupils dilated as he stares, motionless, at the door. The screen distorts once more. Scene 1, mission beginning. The infinite void of space. The cosmos stretches beyond comprehension, a black abyss speckled with distant stars, their cold light barely illuminating the great unknown. Floating in this endless silence is Ares 7, a sleek spacecraft gliding effortlessly toward the crimson world below. The red planet looms ever larger, a desolate wasteland of rusted rock and whispering storms. Inside the spacecraft, the Ares 7 crew is strapped into their seats, the hum of the ship's systems vibrating through the walls like a distant, ever-present heartbeat. The cabin is sterile, functional, dimly lit by flickering readouts and glowing displays. Each astronaut is bathed in the eerie green-blue light of their monitors as they prepare for descent. A voice cuts through the steady hum of machinery. Calm, authoritative. Commander Laura Hale. Laura, steady, firm. Final approach to Mars. Stay focused. Mission Control wants us at Olympus Mons within the hour. No one questions her authority. Laura Hale is the kind of leader who commands without demanding. There is a steel in her voice, unshaken even in the face of the great unknown. Mark, grinning, voice laced with nervous excitement. First humans on Mars, huh? We should get t-shirts made. His humor feels forced, a fragile joke meant to mask the underlying tension. Peter, adjusting instruments, barely containing his enthusiasm. You joke, but this is history in the making. We could find signs of ancient life. His eyes gleam with scientific ambition, scanning the readouts in front of him. This is what he has dreamed of, what every geologist has dreamed of. The chance to hold, in his gloved hands, proof that life existed beyond Earth. But Emily, the biologist, is strangely quiet. Her body is rigid, her fingers hovering over her console, motionless. A frown creases her forehead as she turns her head slightly, as if listening to something distant, something beyond the cabin's mechanical whirring. Emily, whispering, uneasy. Do you hear that? The others glance at her, confused. Then, as if on cue, the sound begins. SFX, a faint, rhythmic hum, almost imperceptible at first. It is neither static nor mechanical, but organic, like the distant echo of a pulse reverberating through space itself. The crew exchanges uncertain glances. Jack, narrating, voiceover, solemn and distant. At first, it was barely audible. A pulse. A signal. We thought it was just background interference. But it wasn't. It was something else, something waiting for us. Scene 2, Discovery. Mars. A vast, unending expanse of rust-colored dust, broken only by jagged rock formations and deep craters. The thin, alien atmosphere distorts the horizon, creating a wavering mirage effect that makes the landscape seem alive, shifting, breathing. The astronauts step onto the surface, their boots sinking slightly into the loose regolith. A low, howling wind sweeps across the barren land, carrying with it the ghostly whispers of a dead world. The Olympus Mons volcano towers in the distance, an ancient sentinel watching over them with silent menace. Their visors reflect the vast emptiness before them, the world stretching endlessly in all directions. The Ares 7 lander stands behind them, a metallic beacon against the red wasteland. Peter, scanning his instruments, eyes wide with excitement. The signals coming from that cave system could be geological activity or something more. The crew turns toward where he is pointing. In the shadow of Olympus Mons, barely visible against the scarlet dunes, is a gaping wound in the rock, a cave mouth, jagged and uneven, as if something had forced its way out rather than in. Laura, tightening her grip on her gear, authoritative. We check it out. Stay close. No unnecessary risks. They move forward, dust swirling around them as they approach the cavernous entrance. With each step, the rhythmic hum grows louder. SFX, the pulse-like sound now vibrates through the ground, through their boots, through their very bones, deep, resonant, unnatural. Jack hesitates for the briefest moment, his breath fogging the inside of his helmet. Something about this feels wrong. The air here, though barely breathable, carries an unplaceable heaviness, as if the planet itself is warning them to turn back. Jack, narrating, voiceover, distant and regretful. That cave? I should have known. Every instinct told me to turn back. But we didn't, and we never should have gone inside. Scene 3, the cave. A yawning abyss stretches before them. The cave mouth is jagged, torn open like a wound in the Martian crust. From its depths, an unnatural cold spills outward, defying the usual thin, dry atmosphere of Mars. The rhythmic hum, no longer distant, pulsates through the air, reverberating through their helmets, pressing against their eardrums like something alive. The crew steps inside, their helmet lights flickering against the cave walls, revealing strange formations that twist and coil like frozen tendrils of an unknown material. The rock here is too smooth, too deliberate, as if it wasn't shaped by natural erosion, but by something else, something intelligent. Their breaths come in short bursts, fogging the visors of their helmets. Each step sends up small plumes of fine red dust that hang in the still air before settling silently. Emily, whispering, voice barely audible through the comms. Something's here. The moment she speaks, a shadow moves. Not the kind cast by their lights. This one shifts against the darkness itself, an outline where there should be nothing. Then a scream. A high, sharp, gut-wrenching sound that cuts through the silence like a knife. The cave erupts with noise, a sudden rush of static filling their comms. The lights flicker, just for a second, and when they come back, Emily is gone. Only her equipment remains, scattered across the rocky floor. Her motion tracker beeps uselessly. Her helmet lies tilted to one side, its visor reflecting nothing but darkness. Mark, panicked, breathless. What the hell? Emily. His voice cracks. He spins, sweeping his light wildly through the void. But there's nothing. No footprints, no movement, just the vast, devouring blackness. Jack, narrating, whispering, haunted. She vanished. Just gone. One moment she was there, the next, nothing. And then, we saw them. A ripple in the darkness. The shadows deepen, shifting like a living thing, and from within them, something steps forward. A figure. Tall. Too tall. Its frame thin, elongated, unnatural in its stillness. Its skin is almost translucent, like stretched, pale leather over bone. Its eyes, too large, too dark, too knowing, lock onto them. And then, it grins. Laura, steady, but shaking slightly. Stay back. The figure doesn't move. Then, in an instant, it does. A blur, faster than anything human should be able to move. The air seems to ripple around it. And suddenly, Laura is gone. No scream. No struggle. 1 second she is there. The next, she isn't. The lights flicker violently. The rhythmic hum is deafening now, pounding in their skulls like a second heartbeat. SFX, static, heavy breathing. Jack's heart pounding. Jack, narrating, terrified, raw. We ran. We ran like hell. Scene 4, escape. The Martian night stretches before them, empty and endless. The dust-covered rocks, the distant silhouette of Olympus Mons, everything looks the same. Except it isn't. The cave entrance is gone. Where there was once a jagged opening, now there is only rock. Peter, frantic, voice shaking. The landscape, it shifted. We're trapped. He turns in circles, his breaths ragged inside his helmet, staring at the unbroken rock face. His fingers claw at the stone, as if demanding it reveal the passage they had just stepped through minutes ago. Jack's own breathing is heavy, fogging his visor. Mark is silent. Too silent. Jack turns to him. Mark is standing rigid, staring into the darkness beyond them. The weak glow of their suit lights doesn't reach far, but it doesn't need to, because something is standing there. No many things. Dark, humanoid figures, barely distinguishable from the Martian night. They do not move. They do not breathe. They just watch. Mark, whispering, voice hollow, cold realization sinking in. We're not alone. The figures remain still, but the air grows heavier. The hum hasn't stopped, no, it has changed. It is no longer a pulse, but a whisper, a sound that isn't a sound, a pressure that isn't real, and yet, Jack feels it in his bones. The realization crashes into him like an avalanche of dread. They were never meant to leave. They were never meant to return. And the things standing before them, they had never left. Scene 5, the truth. The room is small, suffocating. Dim light spills from a single flickering bulb above, casting long, jagged shadows on the cracked walls. The air is stale, thick with the scent of damp concrete, and something else, something metallic, like rust or dried blood. Jack sits motionless, hunched over a battered desk, his face barely illuminated by the pale glow of an old computer screen. His hands tremble against the keyboard. His eyes hollow, distant, haunted. They no longer belong to a man, but to a survivor of something unspeakable. The camera flickers. Static crawls across the screen, distorting the image for a moment before stabilizing. Jack exhales shakily and leans forward, his breath audible, almost ragged. Jack, whispering, voice cracked, on the edge of breaking. They told the world we died. A pause. His fingers tighten on the table's edge, knuckles white. Jack, they covered it all up. But I know the truth. We weren't sent to explore. We were sent because they knew. His voice drops lower, as if the walls themselves are listening. Jack, NASA detected the signals years ago, but they didn't tell us, because we were expendable. SFX, a distant thud. Faint, but unmistakable. A noise from outside. Jack's head jerks toward the door. His breath catches in his throat. The air shifts, the atmosphere tightening like an invisible vice. He turns back to the camera, his movements sharp, frantic. Jack, hurriedly, voice shaking. The creatures, they weren't aliens. He swallows hard, eyes darting toward the shadows creeping in at the corners of the room. Jack, they were us. A failed experiment. A government project to create a new kind of human, one that could survive Mars. A heavy silence follows. The realization sinks in, suffocating, unbearable. Jack, lower now, eyes wide, fear bleeding through every word. But they weren't human anymore. A noise outside. Louder this time. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Jack's breath comes in sharp gasps. His hands shake as he reaches for something a pistol old, worn, but still loaded. His fingers wrap around the handle, knuckles white. Jack, voice breaking, barely a whisper. And now they're coming back. SFX, a loud, violent bang at the door. The wood shudders under the force. The lights flicker. Jack flinches. His entire body goes rigid. His pulse pounds against his temples. He stares at the door waiting, listening. They found him. His eyes snap back to the camera. Jack, urgent, desperate, pleading. If you're hearing this, share it. Tell the world. SFX, another bang. The doorknob rattles. The air vibrates with an unnatural hum. Jack's breath quickens. His grip tightens on the gun. His eyes dart between the camera and the door, calculating, hopeless. Jack, before they erase me too. SFX, the screen flickers. Static surges, violent and all-consuming. The video feed distorts. Jack's image warps, bends, and then blackness. Silence. Then, one last whisper. Asterisk. They lied to you.